Did play calling let down Desmond Ridder for the second week in a row? And what is left to play for now that the Falcons are officially eliminated from the postseason?
You are Locked On Falcons, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
So, guys, you know me. I'm Aaron Freeman, a.k.a. Mr. Drew, a.k.a. Sirius Black, and a.k.a. the most humble host of this illustrious Locked On Falcons podcast. And today's episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. BetterHelp is not a crisis line. It's not self-help. It's professional therapy done securely online, available to people worldwide. And they have a special offer for my listeners. You can get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/lockedon. And guys, we thank you for making Locked On Falcons your first listen each and every day. Of course, it's free and available Monday through Friday, and sometimes even on a Saturday or a Sunday on your preferred podcast platform, including on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to Locked On Falcons on YouTube, and you will get the video version of the podcast the night before the audio drops. And also, guys, you can also check out Locked On Falcons on your Roku and Amazon Fire TV. Just download the Locked On Sports Atlanta app, and you'll get all the Locked On Sports Atlanta shows like Locked On Falcons, Locked On Hawks, Locked On Bulldogs, etc. on your Roku and Amazon Fire TV. So we are coming at you guys a few hours after the Falcons 17-9 loss to the Ravens on Christmas Eve. And, this is an early Christmas present of me being frustrated with this football team. They fell once again into another 14-0 hole, but instead of this happening 7 minutes into the game like it did last week against the Saints, it took about 28 minutes for the Ravens to build up that 14-0 lead. And unfortunately, the Falcons did nothing offensively in those first 28 minutes, especially in the first quarter. And it was basically a longer, slower, more painful death this time. And longtime listeners know I'm not a big fan of calling out play calling. I thought criticism last week was warranted, but I wasn't going to blame the loss on play calling, nor am I going to blame today's loss on play calling, but I am going to call out play calling. Let's get into it, right? And I know some of you guys are like, oh, of course you're going to call out play calling, Aaron, because that allows you to sort of pass the buck and not criticize Desmond Ridder. Okay, if you want me to criticize Desmond Ridder, he did not play well today, right? He wasn't terrible, but he once again looked like a rookie in this game, and especially early on, getting off to another slow start. And for me, like, okay, the first time that happens, all right. But the second time, as George Bush would say, shame on. The point is I can't get fooled again, right? And so I just sit here and I go, like, you start the game with 2 3 and outs. You have 6 plays on those first 2 possessions, and none of those plays involve handing the ball off to Tyler Allgeier, who's coming off 139 rushing yards. You're sitting here, we're talking about you script the first 15 or so plays of the game, and you're telling me that your game script at no point in the first 6 plays said, let's give the ball to the guy that was cooking last week, right? You're waiting till the 7th play for you to hand the ball off to Tyler Allgeier. And so when you look at the passing game, not only that slows down the running game, but then you look at the passing game, and I got criticism for that because Desmond Ridder, again, got off to another slow start. This has been a theme of his going back to his days at Cincinnati, right? But you look at, like, he was 1 for 4 starting this game on those first couple of series in the first quarter. You count the 2 sacks, a scramble. Basically, he had 7 dropbacks on those first 12 or so plays on the first 3 possessions in the first quarter. 7 dropbacks. They only gained 7 yards on those plays, right? And so to me, like, the whole goal, you as a play caller, Arthur Smith, is to get this guy off, this rookie quarterback, get him into a rhythm as early as possible so that you can get off to a lead and put the Ravens on their back foot. And we did not see that. And right, I've given Arthur Smith praise all year long for playing to the strengths of his football team, doing his best to mask this team's weaknesses with his play calling. I would like to see some of that now that Desmond Ridder has taken over. We saw that for 13 games with Marcus Mariota. Where has that been now that Desmond Ridder has gotten? And finally, they start to get things going in the 4th series of the game. Now that we're in the second quarter, they start running rollouts. They start running screens, right? You get the simplified reads on these play action rollouts where you have a high-low read. If the high read is not open, you just check the ball down on the low read. That's an easy, simple play for your rookie quarterback to get into a rhythm. You run the screen passes. These are high percentage passes. Get the ball into the hands of your playmakers, right? And you run these rollouts. You get 10 yards to Olamide Zaccheaus. You get 9 yards to Drake London. You run your first screen. It's a 14-yard play to Cordero Patterson. Then you run it again a couple plays later to Tyler Allgeier. It goes for 26 yards. And, like I'm sitting here going like, why aren't we doing this on like the first 4 plays of the game or something like that? But by the time you start running this stuff in the second quarter, you're now down 14-0. And so like now I'm getting it like, okay, the reason why you weren't willing to move off of Marcus Mariota, because if you moved off of Marcus Mariota, it's actually going to require you to coach even better than you did before. So like was that too much to ask for you? And so you can sit here and call it nitpicking. You can call it second guessing, call it whatever you want. But I don't feel like this is rocket science, guys. Like, hand the ball off to Tyler Allgeier and run some of these high percentage passes and let's see if that works. I don't think that's a crazy assumption to make or anything that I'm talking on a turn for asking for. Like, I didn't expect the Falcons to win this game, but I don't know. Maybe try some of this stuff. Seems like a no-brainer in the first quarter before you start getting beat too bad. And so, there's a lot we could unpack with the causes of this game, just so much, but we're not going to, right? The officiating was poor in this game, but like that's out of your control. The thing that's in your control, right? The thing that BetterHelp, our proud sponsor for today's episode, has taught me over the last couple of months that I've been in therapy is you can only control the things that you can control. You can't control if the officials are going to blow calls, right? What you can control is maybe, I don't know, in the first 7 or 12 plays, what you're going to call. And so those are the things that really frustrate me, guys. I got no issue with Arthur Smith's decision making late in the game, particularly going for it on that 4th and goal, down 11 points, and rather than going for points, like the touchdown, going for the touchdown is the right call, right? Because you needed a touchdown. You're down 2 scores. You need a touchdown at that point, right? Even if you get the 3 points, you still got to get a touchdown. Your best chance to get a touchdown is at the 1 yard line. Right? You're down 11 with 7 minutes left in the game. You're at the 1 yard line. You're basically only guaranteed maybe one more possession in this game. Your best chance to get a touchdown on that, on these possessions is the one where you're at the 1 yard line. So anybody who's sitting here saying he should have taken the points, like that to me is not a fair criticism of Arthur Smith, right? Now, we can criticize the play calling on that 4th and goal situation and leading up to that 4th and goal. That would be fair to call it nitpicking. And, let's nitpick for a second. You got the number 2 and number 3 run blockers in the NFL, according to PFF, on the right side of your offensive line. But boy, does this team love running it left. This was a meme last year, guys. Longtime listeners know that we used to joke like they love running it left when it doesn't work, and they love running it left, right? They ran it left on that 4th in goal. They ran it left on the 3rd and goal that Tyler Allgeier, or the 2nd and goal that Tyler Allgeier tripped over himself. And what's funny is like, let's do some nitpicking. Let's look at the box score again. Let's look at the box score. If you look at, leading up to that 4th and goal at the goal line, the previous 5 times that they ran it left, and they all came on that drive that led up to that, they gained 5 carries, 5 yards, right? And then you go back and look at all the 5 previous times where they ran it right, and it goes back even further, like into the 3rd quarter, because again, they refuse to ever run it right, despite having the best run blocking right side of their offensive line in the entire NFL. And you look at the 5 times they ran it right, according to the box score, they gained 29 yards on those 5 runs. And I get it. You only need 1 yard, right? So if you're averaging 1 yard per carry running it left, you only need 1 yard. So let's run it left, even though you're averaging like 6 yards per carry running it right. And it's like, maybe you could do that, but hey, that's just nitpicking, right? You can say what you will about PFF's grading system, but I feel like the grades, hey, we're averaging 6 yards per carry running it to this side. Must be because the guys on that side are blocking well. We're only averaging 1 yard per carry on that side. Must be because the guys aren't blocking that well on that side. So I don't know. Doesn't feel like rocket science, but we'll let that go, guys. And we'll continue today's episode talking about the red zone struggles for the Falcons offense, the red zone struggles for the Ravens offense, which is a good thing. We'll talk about the defense. We'll talk about some positives from the defense, but there's one element of the defense that also has me fired up, and we'll get into that, guys, as we continue today's episode. But before we do, I want to tell you about Turo, the world's largest car sharing marketplace. With Turo, you can book any car you want, wherever you want, from a community of local hosts. You can browse a huge selection of vehicles for just about any occasion or budget across the US, UK, Canada, and now in Australia. Book that spacious SUV for that upcoming family road trip. You can get a luxury car for that special event. Find an affordable economy car if you're on a budget and you just need to get from A to B, or you can test drive that new electric vehicle that you had your eye on and see if it fits your lifestyle. Many Turo hosts can even deliver the car directly to you. Every trip is backed by liability insurance. Terms, conditions, and exclusions apply. Ditch the boring rental cars and find your drive at Turo.com. That's Turo.com. Now on to something more serious, guys. Did you know that driving high is considered driving under the influence? That's right. Driving under the influence of marijuana is against the law in every single state, even the states where marijuana is legal. That means driving high can get you a DUI. And if you think law enforcement can't tell when you're driving high, you're wrong. Your friends can tell, your coworkers can tell, even your parents can tell, everyone can tell. So what makes you think that law enforcement officers don't know when you're driving high? Driving under the influence of marijuana can slow your response time and change how you perceive time and speed. So even if you think you're fine to drive when you're high, you're not. Because the bottom line is, if you feel different, you drive different. Driving high is driving under the influence. So remember, drive high, get a DUI, paid for by NHTSA. And guys, I want to thank you for making Locked On Falcons your first listen each and every day. And for your second listen, check out Locked On Sports Today. From the games that matter to the biggest stories in sports, go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with the local experts that only Locked On can provide by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today, available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. So let's talk about the red zone, right? The Falcons didn't get it done on offense in the red zone. They were over 4 in the red zone today. And getting a couple of those conversions would have probably made a big difference in this game. But to the defense's credit, they kept the Ravens 1 for 4 in the red zone. And this is the classic Dean Pease style of defense. It's that bend but don't break. They gave up a ton of yards, especially on the ground. Right, we said it on the crossover with Locked On Ravens host Kevin Ostreicher. The Ravens are probably going to get 180 yards rushing. Falcons will probably get 150 yards rushing. The difference between that is, going up against a good run defense like the Ravens have, and the Ravens going up against a bad run defense like the Falcons have, and it wound up being pretty accurate. The Ravens had 184 yards rushing. The Falcons got 115. And I think the difference is, probably maybe you run it a little bit more with Tyler Allgeier at the beginning of the game. Maybe you get to 150. I don't know. Or you run it right a couple of times. I don't know. Maybe you would have gotten to 150, but that's about par for the course for me. And, frankly, given my expectations for this game, the fact that, they kept the Ravens running game to under 200 yards, I'm like, hey, I'll take that. That's a win in my book, given how poor our run defense is. Now, of course, the Ravens were able to break their streak of, not having a wide receiver catch a touchdown pass in a game. They hadn't gone, 13 weeks since week 3. But the last time a wide receiver caught a touchdown pass. So, of course, Demarcus Robinson got a touchdown, beating Cornell Armstrong. And that's really where I want to talk about this defense, right? Let's complain a little bit more on today's episode, guys. The positive, I will say, we'll put a positive spin on. It did look like the Falcons figured it out after that touchdown, and they were like, you know what? Let's get D. Alford out there at that outside cornerback spot, something that, I've been wanting to see for several weeks now. I'm sure many of you guys have been wanting to see, since the beginning of the season. I know at least one person, Chris over at A1 Forever, he'd been calling for D. Alford to be the guy since week 1. So, hopefully you're going to get your wish now, because it did look like they had Alfred out there at the end of the game. D-Jax almost got him on a go route at the end of the game, but I'll take that. You know what I'm saying? Because, for me, and I talked about this on the postcast with Jarvis Davis, Hall and Armstrong, they have done nothing since week 10 to merit, the amount of playing time that they've been getting these last couple of weeks. And so if Alfred goes out there and gets cooked, for the next couple of games, I'll take that. That to me is an improvement, right? Let's find out what he has over these next couple of games, because we know Hall and Armstrong ain't the guys, right? We don't know if that's the case with D. Alford. It's the similar situation, with the Mariota Ridder stuff, where it's like, we know Mariota's not the guy, Freudian slip there. Let's find out if Ridder's the guy. Right, you can give Rashad Fenton another shot for all I care. But I'm done with the Darren Hall, Cornell Armstrong starting opposite AJ Terrell in this game. And hopefully, if Alford is out there, they'll get more pressure in future games than they got in this game, because they got no pressure in this game. I think they recorded 0 quarterback hits. You know, I have to believe that like that's never happened before. Even with the Falcons pass rush, that they've never had a game where they got 0 hits on the quarterback. There's had to been at least games where they got 1 or 2 hits. They got 0 in this game. I would guess, again, we'll see what the PFF numbers say, but I would guess they had maybe 2 pressures in this game, 2 maybe, right? But like the pass rush being non-existent, like that's like water is wet, guys. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's not going to get fixed until 3 months. But I feel like the secondary, again, not saying that Alford or Fitton's going to fix the problem, but I feel like there's some room for improvement there. The pass rush is nothing's going to change with that until we get to March, when we actually can spend some money. I'm willing to be patient with the pass rush, but I am no longer patient. I can no longer watch, Darren Hall and Cornell Armstrong, get off the struggle bus every single week, right? I feel like Patrick Stewart in that Star Trek movie. The line must be drawn here, no further. Like, I just feel I can't do it anymore. I can't do it anymore. So we'll end this conversation on the defense talking about another positive from the defense today. They held Mark Andrews in check, man. He had 3 catches, 45 yards, 36 of those yards came when he beat AJ Terrell. And basically, like, if he's going to beat AJ Terrell, like, that's our best chance of stopping him, and he was still able to beat him. I'll take that. Like, you know what I'm saying? I'll give the defense credit. They checked that box in terms of keeping Mark Andrews from absolutely having his get right game and annihilating them in this game. The other positive you could say, it took them a while, took them to the third quarter, but they finally stopped the quarterback runs, right? They finally stopped it. It took 2 games of getting cooked by Taysom Hill, and then basically Tyler Huntley, rushing for like 30 plus yards on like the first 5 times they were running those QB sweeps and whatnot. But they finally stopped it, right? They finally stopped it. Troy Anderson got a nice strip on him in the third quarter, and basically Baltimore was okay. We're not running that anymore. So it was like, okay, it took 16 weeks, but we finally stopped it, guys. So I sit here and I go, I'll take whatever wins I can get for this defense, and now we'll count that as a win. So, speaking of wins, we'll see if the Falcons get any more, but it's not going to matter anymore because they're out of playoff contention. And we'll talk about sort of what we can look forward to for the rest of the season, as well as looking a little bit ahead to sort of what the main goal should be this offseason, guys. But before we get there, I do got to plug the Locked On Sports Atlanta podcast feed, where you can find Jarvis Davis and Tanisha Batiste, the host of ATL Day Ones. You can find John Chuckery on Hitting Hard. You can find Mark Zeno on A to Z, breaking down local sports as well as national sports, all on the same podcast feed. And Locked On Sports Atlanta is also the home for the Locked On Falcons postcast, guys, where Jarvis and I go live each and every Sunday, occasionally on a Monday, occasionally on a Thursday, and now even on Saturdays. Guys, we go live minutes after the game to give you the breakdowns immediately. If you can't wait for this rapid reaction, head on over to Locked On Sports Atlanta. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube so you get that Locked On Falcons postcast. Make sure you subscribe to it on your preferred podcast platform so you can get all the lowdown all week long on the Falcons, on the Braves, on the Hawks, on those Georgia Bulldogs. The Falcons aren't going to the playoffs, but those Bulldogs are going to the playoffs. So get the lowdown on Locked On Sports Atlanta wherever you get your podcast. And guys, let me tell you about the number one source in sports betting info. That is, of course, betonline.net. They're the number one source in sports betting info, news, stats, analysis. And if you love podcasts, and I know you do, you can also find those at BetOnline as well. You can get the latest odds and trends for every professional or amateur league out there, from football to basketball, soccer to esports, right? If you're trying to get some money back that you spent this holiday season, January is a great time to sign up at betonline.net. You got the Australian Open coming up. You got the Winter X Games coming up. And if you're not into that, well, guess what? There's playoffs, right? College bowl season, NFL playoffs, all that and more. So head to the website today at betonline.net. Use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. So, obviously, I think when we look ahead to what's left to play these last 2 games, you want to see progress from Desmond Ridder, right? No brainer there, guys. Ooh, congratulations. You needed me a Locked On Falcons. You want to see progress, right? You want to see this regime develop a quarterback, because we can sit here and we can argue all day long, as I'm sure some of you guys are currently doing in the chat or in the comments or on Reddit or on Discord or wherever you guys like to argue, Twitter, all those places to argue about quarterbacks, because I know so many of you love to do it. But like, if we're sitting here, we're having the same conversation we had at the beginning of the show, like whether it's Desmond Ridder or CJ Stroud or Bryce Young or whoever, like, like if our play calling is not going to do a good job adjusting to a young quarterback, doesn't matter who the young quarterback is. So we need to see something from that. So obviously we want to see Ridder play better. We want to see the coaching staff put him in a position to succeed. So that's the big thing, right? Now, the other thing we have to see is, can the Falcons get another win? Because that's important, guys, because if the Falcons don't win another game this year, that means they finish 5-12. And a certain someone predicted at the beginning of the year that they would finish 5-12 this year. And if they do wind up finishing 5-12, that certain somebody is going to be, the most egotistical, narcissistic, know-it-all person that you guys love to say that person is. I don't know who you're talking about, but I say that jokingly, and do I? But look, I expect them. I'm optimistic next week that they will get a win next week against the Cardinals at home, against Colt McCoy. Right, they'll get that win. We'll see about the Tom Brady stuff at the end of the year. But so hopefully, for your guys' sake, you won't have to listen to some egotistical, narcissistic know-it-all that accurately predicted their final win prediction. One of the things I plan on doing, I'm going to turn 40 next month, guys, and I plan on getting my first tattoo. And I think I'm going to get like Falcons Prophet. So it's going to be even in a bigger font, basically. If I accurately predict the 5-12. So we'll see how that goes. I'll give you an update on that. But, what's going to be interesting looking ahead to the offseason is Grady Jarrett was visibly frustrated. There was a clip online after the game, basically calling it same stuff. He didn't say the word stuff, though, different year. And, it's like the main goal this offseason is going to be getting this guy some help. Right. And I know a lot of the conversation from here to whenever this offseason is going to be about what do the Falcons do at the quarterback position. And that is definitely a worthwhile conversation to have. Now, when it comes to one of those options being, going after Lamar Jackson, as I discussed on the previous episode last week, that doesn't make much sense to me. Like, I don't understand why people think that this team is one high-priced quarterback and basically a single offseason of spending on to get Grady Jarrett help on the defense away from basically just, being a 9-8 football team. I just kind of find that baffling. It feels like we're just going right back to where we were the last 5 years, where we had an overpaid quarterback and no help around him because, this rebuild is only at the beginning, but yet people want to kind of skip to the end. I find that baffling, but, that's kind of how I feel about that. But we'll leave that aside. I'm sure we'll have plenty of opportunities for me to express my confusion over that issue in the coming days and weeks. But we will have to have a legitimate conversation, to me, which is much more of a legitimate conversation and worthwhile debate about whether or not Desmond Ridder is the guy or we draft a quarterback, right? And currently I am not sold on the idea of drafting a quarterback because I haven't necessarily fallen in love with any of these quarterbacks. But then again, if you rewind the clock, 2 years at the end of the 2020 season, I was not sold on the idea of drafting a quarterback then. But by the time we got to April, I was very much sold on the idea of drafting a quarterback. So that may happen this year, right? We had a recent episode with Mark Schofield of SB Nation, talked a little bit about the quarterback class. So go check out that episode. I don't think this is going to be a situation like the 2021 draft was, where the Falcons were picking at 4. They had a very talented quarterback basically fall in their lap. And to me, it just made too much sense to get that guy. I don't think that's going to be the circumstances this year, because I don't think, my personal opinion, at least based off of where I think now, and again, we'll see if I feel differently about by the time we get to April, but I don't think you're dealing with the same level of talent at the quarterback position at the top of this year's draft as you were at that year's draft. Plus, you don't necessarily know at this point in time if a quarterback that you like, is going to be there and where the Falcons are going to be picking. So we'll have to see how that all shakes out. All right. Now, according to tankathon.com, as of this recording, the Falcons are currently hold the 7th overall draft selection. Now, if some of these 4-win teams, win some games, down the stretch, maybe the Falcons could get as high as the number 3 overall. I think that's technically mathematically possible. But if I was to guess based just how I think the season is going to go, they'll probably pick somewhere in the 5, 6, 7 range. Now I don't know if 6 or 7 is going to be high enough to get Jalen Carter or Will Anderson. So blame Marcus Mariota, guys, for that one. He was just too competent, right? This stinking Nick Bosa, man. I'm sorry, I'm just being silly now. But like, yeah, we'll see if we'll see how that goes. But I do think they may be high enough picking it like 6 or 7 to get probably the third best non-quarterback in this draft class, which may be a pass rusher, which certainly Grady Jarrett would appreciate, and maybe high enough to get one of the 2 or 3 best quarterbacks in this draft class. So we'll see how that all shakes out, guys. I'm sure there will be plenty more to talk about on that subject over the coming months. But that is something that you can look forward to. And I look forward to your feedback in the comments of, where you stand on some of those issues, where you stand on this Ravens performance. What were some of the positives that you saw? What were some of the negatives that you saw? What are some of the things that you think can be addressed in these next 2 games? Such as, benching certain corners and promoting other corners, doing a better job with your game script in, I don't know, the first 7 to 12 plays. I don't know. Those seem like achievable dreams for me. Are they for you? So let me know. Of course, you can provide your feedback to that. And those places are also the places to go, because we're gonna have a full week of shows, right? Because we're playing on Saturday. We'll probably get a second look at this game, talk about some of the other issues that we didn't get to on this rapid reaction on tomorrow's episode. But we also might do a mock draft Monday. I think that would be a good time to start that up. That we usually start it up after the Super Bowl, but what else are we doing, guys? It's an early Christmas present, right? Or I guess technically a late Christmas present, but it's Christmas time, so you get an early present compared to waiting until February. That's what I mean. So that's probably on the docket for tomorrow. Then we'll probably do a Q&A. So your feedback is welcome. Your questions are welcome. I know some of you guys sent in questions last week. We probably will get to those on Tuesday as well. But Locked On Falcons is the place on social media, Twitter, Facebook. LockedOnFalcons@mail.com is the email address. Locked On Falcons, of course, leave a comment here on the YouTube channel and the Locked On Falcons Discord. You can hit me up. There's a link in the description below. We'll get back probably to the All 22 review of this game on Wednesday. We'll do a crossover Thursday, of course, with Locked On Cardinals host Alex Clancy on Thursday. And then, Friday we'll be back joined by Jarvis to do those keys to victory for the upcoming Cardinals game. So that's the full week. So you guys have a full week of shows coming at you, a normal week of shows, and an extra day of shows given this Saturday performance. So look forward to that. And thank you for making Locked On Falcons your first listen. I hope you continue to make it all week long for this great content that we have coming your way. And of course, check out Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Sports Atlanta for your second listen, guys. Really appreciate it. You can find those wherever you listen to Locked On Falcons, all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Merry Christmas, everyone. And I hope you have a happy new year.